Hi everybody. Well, today I'm going to show you how to make the small sheet metal box. In class, you should have gotten a packet that looks like this with step-by-step directions on it. The first direction is to take out the paper patterns and to cut them out. If you look on the second and third page, you'll notice that there are 3 pieces on one page and 1 piece on the last page. By now, hopefully, you should know how to cut things out with scissors. So go ahead, cut these pieces out. You should end up with 4 pieces when you're done. Make sure to put your name on each piece because you never know when you're going to need your pattern again. I went ahead and I cut out my pieces ahead of time. All right, so I have those all cut out for you. Then what you're going to do, once you have your pieces cut out, you're going to assemble the box from paper. You want to do this because you want to get an idea of how our box is going to get put together. And it's much cheaper if you make a mistake on paper than it is on metal. Once you've had it assembled, show the teacher, or me, and then we're going to trace this onto our sheet metal. I'll be giving you 4 pieces of sheet metal that look like this, and you're going to want to get a Sharpie. I don't care what color it is, but you're going to want some type of permanent marker because when we trace our patterns on here, we want the marker to be able to see. So I have my pieces. I just took my patterns. I went ahead and did a little step ahead for you guys. So step 2 on your directions tells you, it says trace the patterns onto the sheet metal, use a marker to trace the outside lines, use a marking gauge to trace the inside lines. Well, the marking gauge we have is a new tool. All right, this is our marking gauge right here. What it does is it has a ruler on it and it has a little scribe on the end. The scribe is going to go ahead and scratch in our metal for us. So all I have to do is set my measurement on the side here by using the little lead screw on the bottom. I'm just going to set it to 1/4 of an inch because most of our measurements are either going to be 1/4 of an inch for the hem. You might want to write that down on your notes. Or 1/2 of an inch somewhere else. All right, so I'm going to simply start by tracing my material or tracing my pieces. So I just put my pattern on top of my metal, get a marker, trace the outside edges. Then I'm going to grab my marking gauge, all right, get our safety glasses for this, and I'm going to have it set to the 1/4 of an inch, hold it to the edge of the table, and you're going to want to hold the marking gauge, the long part in your hand. The little scribe part is what we're going to put on our metal, push this flat edge up against our metal, and then you just drag the pieces towards you. All right, so I like to start with my large piece first. Then I'm going to get my long narrow piece. This is our handle, and I'm going to mark my 1/4 of an inch on here. All right, now there's one more hem that we have to do, but we can't do that quite yet, and that's on our small pieces, our little end pieces here. We need to cut our edges, and we'll get to that in just a little bit. I'll put my hems right on the inside. So these I just have to hold off for a few minutes, and I'm going to keep my marking gauge close by. I also want to mark 1/2 of an inch for where my tabs are. These tabs are where we fold and connect it to the end pieces. So I'm going to need to use my marking gauge, and I'm going to have to set it at 1/2 of an inch. So bring this on here, set it to 1/2 of an inch. Lock it in place just by tightening the little screw right down here. And then I'm just going to, again, drag it along my edges. And you probably won't be able to see it in the video, but there are scratches now that are on my metal. Okay, so now I don't even have to use a ruler or a marker to make my lines. I'm also going to do it on my handle piece again too. Mark those ones out. Like so. So now I have 1/4 inch and I have 1/2 inch marked. The only lines that I'm missing, besides on my end pieces, are from the bottom of my angle here to here, because this is where one fold is going to go. Now, we could do the math for it, or we could use our marking gauge to line it up. All I have to do is loosen up my lead screw, place it up against my edge here, and I'm going to have my little scribe touch the bottom of my angle. All right, hold it there, lock it in place. There we go. And then I'm just simply going to go ahead and scratch along. And you only have to set it once because it should be exactly the same on the opposite side. All right, so I go ahead and scratch it there. So now I have my lines all marked out. Step 3 on our directions tells us, it says, cut out the pieces of the box using the tin snips. These right here are our tin snips, okay? To use them, they should be locked, hanging in the tool closet. All you have to do to open them up is just squeeze the trigger. It's spring-loaded and it unlocks them. Now, these are cutting through metal, so yes, they will cut you. So you need to be very careful, all right? They have a nice grip so you can put your hand on here. And it's real easy to cut out your pieces. You just simply cut along the lines that you created on your pattern. Now, when you cut these out, you want to make sure that you have safety glasses on because sometimes those little pieces, they tend to go flying. All right? You also want to make sure you cut off your lines completely. You don't want to be able to see your lines. Remember when we traced our pattern on there, what we were doing was we were tracing the outside of our pattern. So now I want to cut my little marker pieces off. You're just going to make sure that you cut all of your pieces, okay, on this big piece. For here, the only pieces that we have to cut are our marker lines. So I just take my tin snips and I cut off all of my ends. They're the angle pieces. Now, I'm making this look a lot easier than it is. You're going to have to use a little bit of pressure when you're cutting, all right? Now, for our end pieces, I just, again, want to cut off where that little line is. And once I do that, I can get my marking gauge back out and I can mark where my hem should go. Now a hem is where we fold over our edge so it's not so sharp, and it also makes it a lot stronger because we're doubling up our material. So again, get my marking gauge out, set it to 1/4 inch. And if you don't have a marking gauge or they're all being used, you could also get a ruler and measure 1/4 inch and then draw your line that way. But then I just take this and I go ahead and make a mark so I know exactly where I want to fold my ends. Once you have all 4 of your pieces cut out and marked, then you're going to move on to step number 4. On your packet, step number 4 breaks each piece down individually, so I'll make a video for each one of those so you know exactly what part you're working on.